This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman.
This is Lauren Lester, the voice of Robin and Nightwing.
And you're listening to the DCAU Review.
Hosted by Cal and Liam.
Streaming at DCAUreview.com.
And on your favorite podcast app.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 337 of the DCAU Review. I am one of your hosts, Cal, and with me, my good friend, good brother, our other host, it's Liam. Liam, we are in the holiday spirit here at the DCAU Review, officially. We are coming off a couple of fun weeks where we covered one of the maybe worst episodes of Batman Beyond of all time. Follow that up with the second feature-length film of the DCAU. I guess production-wise it was anyway, of the DCAU with Sub-Zero last week in a very plus-sized, longer form episode than our normal episode. So thanks if you tuned into that one. If you haven't, check it out. But this week we are moving towards a new era in the age of DC animation. Well, it was at the time, and we talked about it last week. We've officially crossed over now to talking about, discussing, and reviewing the new Batman Adventure style, which means a new style of animation, new characters being added, some new backstories. We're in the future. We're in the futuristic DCAU. Not that future, but we're in the future. And we've got an interesting one today because while we're in the future, it somewhat adapts a story from the past, all for this debut new Batman Adventures episode.
That's right. So yeah, it seems like this was this is kind of familiar territory. We've done a whole bonus episode about that Batman Adventures holiday special. So we've already kind of gone over a lot of the bigger beats of the stories. But yeah, there's plenty to talk about as far as its translation into animation, both what is and isn't included in this here episode. Now retitled to have one cohesive title instead of a bunch of individual stories. We're just calling it Holiday Nights, the whole episode. So
that's right. Yeah, this one is a DCAU Christmas classic. It's funny, we were talking about it last week off the air, but this is one that you admitted to watching pretty regularly every Christmas, one of the ones that you pop in. And I admitted that I think, intentionally stayed away from watching it probably since the beginning of the podcast. So it's been about 7 years or so, as we are coming up on our 7th anniversary here, just a couple weeks of me watching this episode. So it was a nice little trip down memory lane. Excited to talk about this one and to get into the spirit of things here with the holiday season with our review of Holiday Nights. But of course, before we do that, we'll get the official IMDb synopsis for this week's episode, which of course is brought to you by The Pod Tower. Head over to youtube.com/The Pod Tower today and subscribe. Not only can you get our entire catalog available in one convenient streaming area, but you also get the entire streaming catalog of the Tim Talk podcast, as well as the ongoing series from our friends at Watchtower Database. Jump on the Bat-Wagon, all in one convenient streaming area. Head over to youtube.com/The Pod Tower today and subscribe.
Absolutely. So this is the synopsis for Holiday Nights, which is written by Paul Dini, directed by a friend of the show, Dan Reba, with music by Shirley Walker and animation by Coco and Dong Yang. And that synopsis reads as such. The heroes and villains of Gotham City have various adventures during the Christmas holiday season.
That sounds like somebody just read the title of the episode and didn't actually watch the episode, and they just said, all right, write a synopsis. They're like, oh no, I forgot to watch the episode. Well, they have various adventures during the holiday season?
Technically accurate.
Right, technically accurate, but really leaving something to be desired here when it comes to our actual stories. But nonetheless, we will digress. We will pick up the fumble by the IMDb synopsis with our own synopsis here for the episode. And Liam, unlike the Batman the Adventures Holiday Special, this one kicks off with a different story, as we'll discuss here. They're just in different order, that's all. And we open things up with Harley and Ivy, who are bemoaning the fact that they just don't have the holiday spirit. Well, Harley is bemoaning that she doesn't have the holiday spirit because they don't have a Christmas tree in their apartment, and she suggests that they go out and purchase a Christmas tree in order to bring the holiday spirit, and she is met with rather strong pushback from Poison Ivy, who does her best impersonation of a Redditor here, giving a full diatribe, including shaming Harley as to why she should even think about buying a Christmas tree due to the detriment it is to the environment and the Christmas tree purchasing businesses, I'm sure. But she mentions that it's how dare she think about that, but she has a different idea to go out and find Harley some Christmas spirit. So we cut to a party that Bruce Wayne is attending. It's funny, we had a party last week that Bruce Wayne was attending, hosted, or at least in part, hosted by Veronica Vreeland. Veronica pops up again. It appears that she's back to normal. She's dyed her hair red again. She's no longer. She and Bruce also are no longer an item, apparently, because she mentions that she's flirting with Bruce, and he mentions that he's looking forward to spending the holidays by himself.
So tell me, Bruce, what does Gotham's most eligible bachelor have planned for the holidays? Skiing in the Alps? Sunning in the Bahamas? And more importantly, who's he taking?
Actually, I was planning on a quiet Christmas alone, Veronica.
Really? I wouldn't tell them that.
Who's them?
Brucey! You're standing under the mistletoe.
Cheers.
Now, ladies.
And she points out that there's a gaggle of women that are just fawning over him and falling all over each other to try and get a little kiss with Bruce as he is standing under the mistletoe. And as Bruce backs up and attempts to leave, he's actually accosted by somebody in the shadow who gives him a rather large peck right on the face. And while he's taken aback, I guess he just sort of brushes it off as nothing happening, because we cut to him leaving the party. Yeah, he still doesn't know who, I guess, placed the kiss on his lips. As he's leaving the party, someone calls out from a car asking him if he'd like to come join them, and they'd give him a ride home. And he says no, he has his own car, thanks. But the voice calls out and says that they insist, and it's at this point that Bruce is just overwhelmed. He cannot control himself. He's seemingly robotically carried towards the car, sort of like in the old Looney Tunes where like a character would smell a pie sitting on a windowsill and they would just float away. That's what Bruce is kind of like. He's just he's not able to control his body movements, and he heads over to the voices, who reveal to be, of course, none other than Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy, who are in full gear at this point, inviting Bruce into the back of their limousine. And it's very clear that Bruce is under the spell of Poison Ivy's toxic and brainwashing induced lipstick. So she is said that they're going to have some holiday fun with Bruce, as we cut to a shot of the chauffeur of the limousine, who also has lipstick marks on him, indicating that he too has been brainwashed. So we don't have to wait long as we see what Harley and Ivy's plan is, as Bruce joins them at a giant department store straight out of a Christmas movie in the 1930s. You gotta love it. Story, like a 15-story tall building where the top floor is nothing but department stores. So we got a very funny montage that's very faithful to our source materials we'll talk about in visuals, but montage of Harley and Ivy trying on various outfits and perfumes and various different things, and then this is interspliced with footage of Bruce Wayne signing receipts, clearly none too happy about signing them, putting up some sort of resistance, but is compelled by the hypnotic lipstick to continue signing these credit card receipts. So we cut to our villainesses leaving an elevator once again, joined by Bruce, who's carrying a rather comically large pile of gifts. A tower of gifts, I would say at this point. Do we mention this is a Paul Dini episode? Because everything about this just screams Paul Dini, and it's great. So Bruce carries the giant pile of packages out, and as he steps off the elevator, he begins to put up a little bit of resistance, saying that he's about had enough, especially when Harley mentions that she sees some pianos that she's interested in buying.
Step lively there, Brucey.
Look! Pianos!
I've had just about enough of this.
I think the stuff is wearing off.
Can't have that. Give him another shot.
Right-a-rooney! Give me some sugar, baby.
No, not again. Ah!
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god! We killed him. Oh well.
We were going to do it anyway.
We got his credit cards, what's to worry?
It's at this point that Ivy recognizes that the effects of the aforementioned lipstick appear to be wearing off, and she gives her lipstick to Harley and says that Bruce needs an additional dose, at which point it appears that Bruce is completely out from underneath of the hypnotic spell at this point. He begins backing away and trips and falls down or appears to trip and fall down an elevator shaft that was conveniently under construction next to the elevator that they exited from. And it appears that Bruce has fallen to his death. Harley and Ivy take at least 5 seconds to mourn the loss of their recent windfall of cash, noting, however, that they still have his credit cards and they'll continue to use them, and they were going to kill him anyway at some point. So at this point, they decide to leave. We then cut to a shot of them leaving in a car, and fast behind them is none other than the Dark Knight himself, showing us that Bruce himself. I missed the point where Bruce's hand pops out from the elevator shaft after they've left, indicating that he has survived the fall, obviously. So as they leave, Batman's hot on their tails. They realize that as they look in the rearview mirror, and they grab the steering wheel, causing the driver to crash into a Wacko's Toy Company toy store. They crash through the front of the toy store and make their way in. Batman follows them shortly after. There's a chase throughout before the women reveal to be on top of this giant totem pole of Christmas toys. It's a very interesting prop for this scene. So Batman climbs the giant tower, and he's met at the top. Just as he peeks over the edge, he's met at the top by a giant boxing glove right to the kisser, knocking him down. He lands on one of the lower platforms, and just when he's trying to gather his wits about him, Harley is revealed there, and in her hands is none other than the gigantic hammer that she's so often shown with, and she whacks Batman again. Batman's got to have multiple concussions at this point, right? Whack to the face with a giant boxing glove, lands on a platform, I don't know, probably 15 feet lower, gets whacked in the head with a giant wooden hammer, falls into a giant pile of presents on the ground. Maybe the presents broke his fall, but the boxing glove and the hammer have to have given him a dual concussion, I'd say there.
Oh yeah, that brain's rattling around for sure.
Well, apparently he doesn't have. I guess maybe we don't see the initial effects as he's able to gather himself enough as Harley and Ivy begin to make their escape, celebratory dances included. And as they attempt to make their way out of the toy store, Batman uses a bat grapple to pull a Christmas tree down onto the top of the both of them. And it lasts, as Ivy points out to Harley, Harley finally has her wish of getting a gigantic Christmas tree.
Aw, gee, Harley, you broke our new toy.
Bye-bye, Betsy!
Here's your stupid tree. You happy?
Yeah.
She says, of course she is, and then a ornament drops right on her head, causing a comical sound. And that brings us to the end of Act 1, Liam, which Act 2, which originally was Act 1 in the comic book, does not feature the Dark Knight at all, but instead features Batgirl and, more specifically, Barbara Gordon, and a couple of other supporting characters who have a lot of comedy in this bit. This one's a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, this not to get too ahead of ourselves. I think this is my favorite of the three bit. First of all, it opens. Barbara is in the mall on Christmas Eve looking for a gift, and she picks out a red tie for her. Which is such a funny visual gag. Like, it's more of a visual gag. But her going, "It's perfect. Dad's gonna love it," and it's the exact tie he always is wearing in this show already. That's such a funny, that's such a funny bit to put in there.
So good.
But yes, as Barbara is picking out those gifts for her dad, she overhears a bit of a commotion. Some kids are crying, and she looks over to see the mall Santa on duty and recognizes him very quickly as none other than Detective Bullock in disguise. We see that he's Santa, and Montoya is his elf helper in her little elf outfit, and they're kind of arguing and bickering with each other about how Bullock hates the stakeout that they're on, but that there's some sort of massive shoplifting ring that's been wreaking havoc all over Gotham this holiday season. So they're on this stakeout duty until the holidays are over, I suppose. And as they're discussing it, we see Bullock interacting with any manner of children, and the results are mixed, I would say. He's making some of them cry. There's one kid who's like angry at him, and he threatens to show him his gun. And then we get kind of a sweeter one where a little girl comes up to him and asks if he can help get her dad out of prison. Upon which time Bullock realizes that he, in fact, is the one who arrested this poor girl's father. So while he can't promise that, he does give her some money and sends her on her merry way. As we cut around the mall to various scenes of Barbara shopping, she happens to notice a what appears to be a young boy taking some things that aren't his, and she tries to intervene, but as she grabs a hold of the kid's wrist, he slips out, and by slips out I mean his whole hand comes off and seems to turn to mud. And at the same time, we see that there's another security guard in the mall chasing another shoplifter, and so Bullock and Montoya spring into action, and all the kids seemingly are surrounded, but at that point they all meld together into one single big mud man who we haven't seen in a long time, and that is none other than Clayface.
Great thing about being a shapeshifter, I can blend in with the crowd outside, make my getaway, and rip off some other joint. Once you two are out of the way, ain't gonna be no one to stop me.
Don't bet on it, Gruesome.
And thankfully, by that point, Barbara is able to find an inconspicuous place to transform herself into Batgirl, and comes in with a big flying kick and knocks Clayface through the window, a big giant window of the department store, down onto the ice rink below, crashing into and actually breaking through, so that Clayface is in the water, and so they have a little bit of a showdown, and it looks like maybe Clayface has Batgirl dead to rights as Montoya and Bullock arrive on the scene again. They begin to start opening fire on Clayface, and Batgirl tells them to shoot this light up Santa that's in the power lines above them instead. And so they do that. The Santa comes swinging down into the standing water where Clayface is standing, and he gets electrified, and that's enough. And so Clayface is incapacitated, at least for the moment, which is interesting because previously we were told that electricity didn't really affect Clayface, but maybe that's something that has changed in his
and water
DNA.
was like his arch nemesis.
Right. The water didn't seem to affect him that much, and electricity does now. I guess that's the result of some chemicals that will be explained in a later episode. But regardless, that is enough to knock Clayface out, and as Batgirl goes off into the night, leaving Montoya and Bullock to pick up the pieces. Bullock is ready to knock off early for the night now that they've caught their shoplifter, but Montoya reminds him that they still need to recover all of the evidence, meaning that Bullock's going to need to roll up those sleeves and get searching inside of Clayface, for lack of a better term, to find that. So that's our fade to black on that, as a very sad Bullock slowly walking towards Clayface to recover all of his ill-gotten gains. And that transitions us from December 24th, 7 days later, to December 31st. And we see Batman, and who's this kid in the red suit that's sitting here, as they're watching a tape of what appears to be the football game, and then all of a sudden it's interrupted by a special broadcast from the Crown Prince of Crime himself, and he's got a special message for Batman and for all of Gotham here on New Year's Eve. He's got a special New Year's resolution.
The ball is snapped. Altieri fades back, looking for an opening.
Hi-ho, couch potatoes. I'm interrupting the toilet bowl to bring you my very special New Year's resolution. Starting tonight at midnight, I, your loving Uncle Joker, do solemnly vow not to kill anyone for a whole year. Which means I'm going to have to work extra fast to bump off a few more of you today.
Hysterical.
As to who, how, and when, let's make that a game. A countdown of victims that will end at midnight, unless our dear Dark Knight stops me first.
His New Year's resolution is not to kill anybody for the next year, so he has to kill as many people as he possibly can on New Year's Eve in order to make up for it. So Batman is there, as you mentioned, in Gordon's office with a young Robin, a much different looking Robin than we last saw, and a different sounding Robin than we last saw in the red. He's also got a different costume. We can talk about that perhaps later in visuals also, but he's got a different costume, and Batman is talking with Gordon. They only have one lead, and that's this scientist who was murdered, a GothCorp scientist who was murdered. He was working on a very special sonic-based weapon that when it sounded, anyone within earshot can be killed. So in order to, it sounds like a gigantic dog whistle, except it's a human whistle, and it will kill all of you instead of just like,
sure,
it's
one
just,
of those.
Yeah, one of those things. So of course, the scientist was killed, and he was there's a picture of him. He's got a gigantic smile on his face, so one can only assume that the Joker was linked to that. Batman puts two and two together, that since that scientist was the one that was dead, that this Dr. Erickson that the Joker must have the weapon, and he must be able to put it someplace where he's going to be able to kill enough people. And the only place that could really make sense to kill the most amount of people, to do the most amount of damage, is at Gotham Square, where the big countdown happens. So we cut to Batman and the new young Robin with him as they do their stakeout of the setup there. Joker is there already setting up.
I love New Year's Eve. So many happy faces. How's it coming, boys?
All set, boss. We hooked up the boombox just like you told us.
Once the bell reaches the clock, everyone's getting a real bad earache.
I really have to congratulate myself on this one. It's almost magic time, and Batman is nowhere in sight. Of course, he does have that annoying habit of spoiling my fun at the last minute. So, I wisely stocked up on party favors.
The Joker's goons, Moler and Kerr, have already set up the bomb to be placed in the giant bell that when it goes off at midnight, it will cause the weapon to go off. And anybody who's not wearing these special earmuffs, that's another thing that Gordon mentioned to Batman. The only defense against the weapon is these special earmuffs. And anybody who's not wearing the earmuffs
if you don't have your noise-canceling Beats by Dre, you are S out of luck in Gotham City this New Year's Eve.
Hope Santa brought some for you, because if not, sorry, you're dead when the whistle goes off. But the Joker, while he doesn't see any signs of Batman there, he is prepared just in case to add confusion to everything. He's handed out a bunch of plastic Joker masks to everybody in attendance, which this is the only plot hole that I see in this story is why would people who know who the city knows who the Joker is, why would they all put Joker masks on? It's not like the Joker movie starring Joaquin Phoenix in theaters in November 2019 or whatever it was. He's not some cult hero that a group of people seem to hold up as, this anti-establishment character. He's a villain that's terrorized Gotham that nobody likes. So why would they all willingly don masks of him? Not quite sure, but nevertheless, the plan works out because everybody loves the masks. Everybody's maybe it's Year of the Joker. Like that's the theme of the party or something.
Sure.
I don't know, but they all wear the masks. So when Batman and Robin arrive searching for the Joker, it's even more difficult to find him because everybody's wearing these masks. So it's basically the world's most gigantic game of Where's Waldo, and the only way for Batman to deduce where the Joker could be, he notices up on stage there's a few gentlemen that are wearing the Joker masks, but also wearing the headphones. He assumes at this point that the Joker has to be close, and the headphones are the dead giveaway. So the man playing the piano on the stage wearing the Joker mask gets hit in the back of the head with a batarang, and it turns around to reveal it is the Joker. And the other gentlemen standing with him are Molaire and Kerr, who go after Batman and Robin at that point. A fight ensues as the countdown begins, and we have a race to the finish here as Batman attempts to do everything he can to stop the machine from going off. The Joker has some champagne that he hits Batman over the head with, interrupting him. Batman is able to grab the champagne away from him after the cork pops out and hits Joker in the eye, temporarily blinding him. He uses the champagne Batman uses the champagne to attempt to squirt the electronics linked to the bomb with champagne to hopefully create a short. The Joker interrupts that attempt by shooting Batman with a gun in the arm, something you wouldn't see very often in children's cartoons, especially the guy Batman actually getting hit with a bullet, but it goes into his arm. At this point, Robin is wrestling with a couple of the goons, and just as things seem to be looking dire for our heroes, the bell strikes 12, but everything shorts out just in time. And the Joker is none too happy, but he's standing there laughing now that Batman is sort of sitting there grimacing with the gun. And wouldn't you know, when the gong goes off at 12, the bell rings, but it also detaches from its contraption and begins a free fall that can only be described as Wile E. Coyote-esque as it lands on the Joker, crushing him. His arm has to be destroyed, right? Like it's in a million pieces. There's no way that bell, unless it was made of like, I don't know, fiberglass or something, that's got to weigh like 1,000 tons, and his arm is just mushed under that thing.
It's pudding now. It's pudding.
Gotham has the best reconstructive surgeons in the world, and somehow they convinced them to do surgery on the Joker to put his arm back together, because it's perfectly fine the next outing that we see him in. But spoiler alert. But the Joker's plan is foiled. The crowd goes wild, and he's left there hanging out inside the bell as Batman and Robin look on. And the Joker, all he can say is, "Ouch."
Fair.
It's right. So that wraps up that story, and we cut next to January 1st. So just a few hours, actually just an hour or two later. So we see Commissioner Gordon is wrapping things up, walking into Joe's Tavern, known by the tavern owner, who's escorting some rather drunken and familiar-looking fellas out of the bar for closing. But before closing everything down, Joe mentions to the commissioner, it seems to be that this is a tradition, that asks if he wants his usual, and the commissioner says he is, but he's ready for his usual, and Joe references his friend. He doesn't call him by name, but he says he heard his friend had a rough night tonight and is not sure if he'll show up. But the commissioner insists that, in fact, he's had rough nights before, and he doesn't doubt that he'll show up. And in fact, there's a noise scuffling in the kitchen. And folks, it's not Santa Claus. It's the Dark Knight.
Happy New Year, Commish. I heard your buddy had a rough night. I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't show this time.
And break our tradition? In fact, unless I miss my guess, that's him now. How's that arm?
Better than the Joker's.
Close one this time.
They're all close ones.
That's right, and we get maybe the most famous scene in this whole New Batman Adventures run is in the first episode, as it turns out.
Mm-hmm.
Because yes, we have Gordon and Batman exchange a few words about tonight's New Year's festivities, and mentions that his arm is doing better than the Joker's. To give your moment, we see that Batman is pretty bandaged up, and as they discuss how it was another close one tonight, they toast to survival as they sit at the table, and Gordon turns to Joe, the diner owner, and tells him that he'll take a cheesesteak to go. And as he turns back around, not only has Batman left, but he paid the bill without Gordon being able to fight him on it. So that's how we get our ending here. Gordon heads out. He doesn't take his cheesesteak with him, by the way. He leaves
That's
without,
right.
which
maybe it's in his coat.
maybe he wrapped it up real tight and it's in the.
Maybe he wafted it. He just like scarfed it down.
Or
like
maybe to go means something
sandwich.
different to Jim. Well, it's New Year's. Jim's probably drunk, so it's fine. He took it to go, and then he ate it by the time he got to the front door. But regardless, we see Jim walk out into the snow and into the new year, and we see Batman swinging into the sky above as we fade to black here on this lovely little trio of holiday adventures.
Yeah, that's right, Liam. So go ahead and begin talking about how we're going to break down and score this thing. It's really, really difficult for me to be very objective with this, as we've kind of encountered this each and every single time that we've done one of the Christmas episodes. Maybe not Christmas with the Joker, because we were brand new in our reviewing of episodes, but the nostalgia is real. No, maybe we talked. I'm sure we talked about it. It's been 7 years, but I'm sure we talked about it. Like the plot aside, it's a tradition to watch these, to read this comic even, or this episode even more so because of the comic and the comic we had growing up, and how often I revisited that, and how often I can just remember the first time. Fun story here, fun inside baseball story. We were gifted this at some point, but our dad had this at in his dresser at one point. Like, I don't know if he bought it to give it to us as a gift or what happened, but I remember finding it and seeing it and reading through it before we were supposed to have it. It wasn't like a Christmas gift, because I know that we didn't actually get it as like a Christmas gift, but at some point it was given to us, but he had it in his possession for whatever reason. And I remember sneaking and looking at it and seeing the Clayface scene, and seeing all of the the Mr. Freeze sequence where he gets whacked in the face with the freeze gun, which we don't even get to see in the episode. But anyway, all of this is so drilled into my head and associated with the holidays and good storytelling, good holiday hero storytelling, that it's hard for me to be like, whew, boy, that wasn't good, or that didn't make a whole lot of sense. Like I said, you could probably poke some holes in here. We poked fun at, oh, wait a minute, so Clayface isn't affected by water, and he is affected by electricity now, but that wasn't the way it was in the first 2 episodes of the animated series. Or, the Joker's arm being completely just he probably would have to have it cut off if it was we're talking for real here. Like he's gonna have an amputated arm at this point because that thing is just dead. He's gonna have a dead arm. But that being said, these stories are so well written and so fun and just bring back all of the nostalgia and the good feelings of the holiday season that you could want, that it's really hard for me to say anything negative about it. So other than the few negative things that I did say, story plot holes aside, citizens of Gotham going insane and deciding to wear masks featuring their biggest, most hated person and villainous person that has created all of this pain and destruction for many citizens of their city. It's a really good, these are really good self-contained stories. And even though they aren't directly connected, it is kind of cool. I like how for the episode they changed. It's not just random stories that are happening around the holiday season. We sort of have a progression that happens here that kind of gives you a timeline of, December 22nd, Christmas Eve, New Year's Day, all of that kind of happening together. So I really like that. I really like that it's laid out well. And the adaptation, we've talked about sometimes when you adapt something, I think Under the Red Hood is probably the biggest example that I can remember. But sometimes when you adapt a comic book into animated form, there's almost this, you either cut out too much or you leave too much. And that was our big critique from my recollection of the Under the Red Hood, was there was just too much in that movie that could have probably been cut out or left out for the animated adaptation, in my opinion. The stories were already written and kind of short enough and have enough little action beats that it just works. Like you have a simple story that you're telling. It involves the holiday. Barbara's shopping. Bruce is at a holiday party. New Year's Eve is here, and it's the couple hours ringing into the new year on the late shift of a police officer. Like these are the settings that we have. They're just self-contained little kind of stories that you tell there that have little action beats with a crescendo at the end for the first three, and then the fourth one's just a little heartwarming tale to really drive home the Christmassy warm and fuzzies.
Yeah, I think this really moves at a clip. It's funny. As we've alluded to, there was a fourth story, that Mr. Freeze story, which is beautiful. I think it's one of the best short Batman stories ever made. But and it is such a shame that we lose that. And we can talk about the why of basically that in that story. It's very clear that Nora Freeze is dead, and Nora Freeze isn't dead no more by this point. So they didn't want to contradict their own continuity, even though that movie again didn't actually come out, as we talked about, until after the show was already airing. But obviously they knew what was going to happen in it. So
right.
Anyway, that is all to say, I don't know how you could have fit that in. I feel like, I think the three they chose are so fun. I wouldn't have wanted really to lose any of those to put that Mr. Freeze one in here. As much as I like that, and it would have been lovely to see Michael Ansara get to voice that story and Kevin Conroy and all of that. But that being said, yeah, I think it moves at a clip. It's fun. You get a lot of, as we'll talk about later, in voice acting. You get so many funny moments for these little characters, little quirky jokes or gags, as we talked about with the Barbara picking out the tie thing is so it's such a funny little thing to throw in there, or Bullock making the kids cry, or Harley being obsessed with getting a Christmas tree and all of that. There's just so many funny little character beats across these episodes that I think is a lot of fun. And then that ending, this very sweet tradition that we find out that the Batman, who's always disappearing and leaving Gordon high and dry on rooftops, but once a year he sits down and has a cup of coffee with them, and they toast to making it through another one. I think that's such a lovely little character moment for Batman and Gordon as well. So
Yeah,
Like, it's a great little heartwarming way to end it, which I feel like that's what you want from your holiday special. You want some gags and some laughs, and then you want to feel the warm and fuzzies at the end there. I think that's so. I think it checks the boxes of a holiday, a special holiday edition of your TV show as well in that way.
Yeah, I mean that's as I don't think I could put it better than that. And I would agree with you. It would have been, I think if you're going to do the Mr. Freeze, it has to be you'd have to like extend it and make it its own episode almost.
Yeah.
Even though that I don't know that there's enough material there. Like I said, you'd have to add stuff onto it. And at that point, while I think in the holiday special, that's my favorite story outside of the,
Sure.
you know, to survival. It's I almost kind of like that it's exclusively available in that comic. Like the artwork in that, Glenmore Comics work and everything in that, it's just great that it sticks up. You didn't have to try and recreate any of that stuff. The imagery, and there's not a lot of dialogue in that one either. Like there's so much that's just images. So it's nice that you have that preserved. You have that story there if you want to appreciate that. But for this, the adaptation of it, to remain faithful to those stories as much as they did. And I knew the stories beat by beat because of how many times I've read the comic and watched this, but it's still kind of amazing to me that they were able to adapt so much. The dialogue is almost exact, like the script is almost exact. And I believe according to the DCAU wiki and some interviews that they've done, like this was a mandate from Warner Brothers. They were like, this has to be adapted into the new Batman Adventures. They're like, okay, we're gonna do this. So I know it wasn't necessarily the idea of the crew to do this, but for them to so faithfully adapt it, not leave anything out, for somebody or people that are as big as fans of the comic book to then have that faithfully adapted in animation, it's really cool. So at the end of the day, this is a Christmas classic. I love this episode. I love the source material that it's based on. I had no choice but to give this a perfect 10 out of 10. It's great. They knocked it out of the park. I don't know what could have been done differently or anything that could have made this more perfect than it is.
Yeah, it's fun. They all, like I said, each little vignette has its own unique flavoring to it, and then it's like we said, you kind of stick the landing with the sweet ending. We get, we'll talk about the music later. There's you get that sort of holiday feeling watching it as well. So yeah, I think it does its job really well. And like I said, like it just moves at a clip. Like you don't have time to get to get bored, because then we're just moving on to the next story. So yeah, it's pretty tight. It's pretty perfect. So yeah, I gave it the old 10 out of 10 as well.
There we go. All right, Liam, let's move on to our next category, shall we? Which is visuals and animation. And lots to talk about here. Our animation provided by Coco and Dong Yang for this week's episode. Boy, we've reviewed a couple of things now with the Batman Superman Adventures crossover. We did cover that. So this isn't the first time seeing the new Batman Adventures style, but it is the first time in a long time that we've seen it. And it is, boy, it's different, isn't it? Like the characters are obviously very different looking. There's a lot less detail, the way that the characters move and look. It's definitely more streamlined.
It's all about the angles. Everybody's very angular.
Yep. Very, very well put. Everybody's very squared off and barrel chested and pointy. And yeah, there's just a lot that's different about it. So it will take a little bit to get used to, I'd say, for the next couple of weeks. But I think this is one of the reasons why at the beginning, when we were like, how do we grade animation on its own when we get to some of this other stuff that's like the budget and the style is just not the same as it was for the original Batman the Animated Series run, which is why you had the brilliant idea, well, let's just broaden it to animation and visuals, and we can kind of just grade everything together. So it helps, I think, with this show. I mean, there were some really, really interesting things. Obviously, we talked about it in our plot breakdown. They adapted almost everything shot for shot, panel for panel. There's like a few things, of course, that are changed here or there. You don't get quite the same drama with the count. I mean, they did their best, but the countdown of the bell being launched into the sky doesn't have quite the same drama. If the Kevin Altieri illustrations of that countdown are just things that stick in my mind forever. The shot of Batman grimacing, holding his bleeding arm as the Joker is like laughing over him. So there's a couple of things that I feel like you had to change or had to be a little bit more dynamic. Otherwise, it would be kind of static figures standing there and a little bit less interesting. But for a Saturday morning cartoon, they pretty faithfully, again, adapted a lot of the same visuals. I think starting off, the easiest thing to point to is the montage of Harley and Ivy and their dress up sequence. Boy, that's a fun one, isn't it?
It's so much fun. They're trying on different clothes. They're having a little fashion show. The bit, which is taken right from the panel by artist Ronnie Del Carmen, of course, the storyboard artist on the series, of them each putting on a giant hat and then turning around to see the other one and pointing and laughing at each other. Adapted almost exactly. So much fun. Harley spraying the giant cloud of perfume on herself, I think, is really that's one that's always stuck with me. So yeah, there's a lot of again, in the comic that's like a whole page, and you just kind of turn into this like fun 30-second montage. In the show, it translates really well. So like you said, it's not a one-to-one visual, certainly not from like a color palette standpoint especially, but it works. The way they do that thing works. The other thing that's standing out to me, and like you said, I think it's going to take us a little time to calibrate like what's on and off model for the new Batman adventures. Like there's I feel like we got there with Superman eventually. Like we started figuring out like how Superman would look, like what's an off-model Superman the animated series episode look like. We certainly figured that out when we got to like the Jade animation episodes. but yeah, I think so. Yeah, as far as those kind of notes might be sparse for this week, but yeah, the other thing I thought of, and obviously we know this is the first one that they produced for Kids WB, as mentioned, and boy, we get some fist on face, no white flashes, and it is somewhat over the top cartoon violence. It's Ivy punching him with the giant the boxing glove on, but she still connects. Right. It's like a POV shot of her punching him in the face, and then I thought the effects, they do kind of do some effects when Harley hits him with the big hammer. You see, he doesn't just see stars; he sees like a whole constellation.
You're right.
Saturn in there. Like it's a funny, like some of the way they visualized his many concussions, as you pointed out, that he receives in that first act there. So they that was the other thing. And I mean, you already mentioned in plot, but him getting shot at the end, and even like the cork shooting into Joker's eye, and some of the Batman and Robin fighting off the Joker goons. Like there's definitely more fist to face, foot to face, without less implying and more showing, I feel like, in this show than we're used to, for sure.
Yeah, definitely a lot more violence, a lot more I think it just feels a little more hard hitting. I mean, interestingly, I do feel like, and it lends more to the actual storytelling, because they're just retelling the original way that the stories were written, and it was a comic for children that was aimed towards children, but the way that the villains are kind of undone isn't through physical violence, other than the Joker. It's more like Batman pulls a tree down on top of Harley and Ivy, so there's no actual fist to face man on woman violence there. While it is horrific and a really great recreation of the original panel, Clayface getting electrocuted is...
all our villains are defeated by a thing falling on them.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, which maybe that was the theme. That was the theme of the comic. Maybe that was done on purpose by
That's
our
another
story.
reason why Freeze had to go. He just gets beat up.
This is true. Yeah, this is true. And Batman just walks away with him. He doesn't.
Yeah.
He just takes him back to Arkham. Yeah. There's so the violence that we do get kind of in between there does kind of stand out because of it. As far as the model of the characters, this is the first time. Is this our first time covering an episode with Tim Drake in it?
Well, if you don't count Static Shock or
Right.
Return of the Joker, yeah.
Yeah, it is. So a new Batman event, right? I guess a standard Batman episode featuring Tim Drake.
Yes.
Interesting. I feel like he's a little bit smaller than I remember in this episode, at least.
Yeah,
a
this
little
definitely feels like
petite.
they scale him up a little bit as the series goes on.
Which would make sense if he's aging and he's supposed to be 13 or whatever. But he just feels a little small in this episode. Batman also feels less. Like I can picture the character model sheet for Batman, and he just feels like a little bit thinner in this. So, yeah, I don't know. But it's consistent throughout the episode. So for having multiple acts with different interactions here, and Batman popping up in 2 or 3 of the 4 acts, he does look the same throughout. But yeah, I think one of the things that stood out to me, I think, was the coloration in that Harley and Ivy story. I love the tones that they use during the montage, and then once they crash into the toy store, I noticed it's almost grayscale. Like there's a little bit of colors here and there, but it's very muted colors, almost
very
completely.
icy.
Very cold, dark. There's there's brief bits of color that are shown here and there, but it's almost completely just like grayscaled, which I really liked. It really lends to the idea of this being a shadowy, dark Toy Story,
It's Wacko Toys, by the way.
Yeah, that's right. Wacko Toy Company. I think I said, did I say Laughco before? I can't remember.
Possibly. Well, Laughco's the Christmas with the Joker company.
That's
Wacko is the Riddler's toy company, ironically,
There
or
you
his benefactor's toy company.
The only things that I noticed, and that I would say, I noticed a couple errors. I didn't know if it was noted on the DCAU wiki, probably because almost everything is on there. Might have been under the
Whether it's an error or not.
inconsistencies. Yes, into the inconsistencies. During the fight sequence, Robin's got long sleeves at one point for some reason. Like his red, they hadn't figured out quite what gets colored and what doesn't. So his bare arms suddenly turn into red sleeves, which, interestingly enough, Jordan Gibson, friend of the show, when they did worked with best friend of the show, Monica Gubina, to do the 'Tis the Season to Be Freezing little mini story a couple years ago, which was a pseudo follow-up to that Mr. Freeze White Christmas episode or story. Jordan chose to give Robin the red long sleeves in that comic. So technically canon, but not. I don't know how he would have switched from one panel to the next in this episode. But unless he just has some kind of button that rolls him up on his tote belt, maybe he's fighting the clown criminal, and he's just like hitting his belt like.
They're going up and down like windshield wipers.
Maybe you could explain it away. But there's also another scene where his shoulder cuffs are also red, completely red. So there were some coloration issues in that sequence. So some errors there with how things were colored that were not quite caught. But overall, I think because of the faithful nature in which the sequences are held up, even things down to like Barbara changing into the Batgirl costume, in the middle of the store while this chaos is going on. We already talked about some of the comedy that happens between Harvey Bullock and Montoya are just so good. Like the lines, we'll talk about it in voice acting, but the lines, the way that they're delivered, the lines the way that they're written, and just the chemistry that those two have, is fantastic. But then the visuals of just like, they really went over the top with how large Harvey is, Harvey Bullock is now. And
he's got like stains all over his Santa coat, and the beard's like hanging down. His bangs are kind of hanging down under the hat. Like,
So good. And while his disappointment was expressed with "ho ho friggin' ho," I believe was the line in the original comic, and he doesn't quite get that ability to express that disappointment here, probably due to some sort of censorship. He does properly convey his disappointment of having to go into Frosty the Lawn Cigar, as he calls him, and have to recover the evidence as he digs through Clayface after
sad Bullock rolling up his sleeves and skulking towards Clayface's unconscious body is a great little visual gag to end on for that section. And then, all right, are you ready for me to date this podcast and also ruin everybody's Christmas?
Of course, absolutely.
All right, so in the Clayface sequence, when Montoya and Bullock first,
I know what you're going to say,
accost Clayface, they threaten them with guns. At which point he Hawk Tuas on the guns and spits on those things.
I knew that was what you were going to say because I literally wrote the same thing down.
Freak, or we'll drill you.
Ooh, you're scaring me, Tubby.
I was like, I can't not do it. And it's like this is already a little outdated. I feel like to say that now, and then imagine someone listening to this in like 2 years.
Well, they'll hear the episode where we talked about how Aztec had double the Riz with Riz, and now we have a Hawk Tua reference here. Boy, we are the most up to date and hip podcast that talks about the DCAU.
I mean, if you could think of another way to describe what he does to these guns, you let us know. But I think it's pretty clear that he Hawk Tuas and spits on those things. So I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. That's we're reporting the facts here. All right, you don't get mad at me.
That's right, exactly. We're just the messengers. Merry Christmas to everyone. Oh man, I can't believe we both wrote that down. That's so funny. Yeah. So I don't know how to transition out of that. But yeah, as far as the animation visuals, the couple of errors there did bring my points scores down just a little bit. But as far as everything remaining relatively faithful to its source material, that would get an A grade. But just a few errors here or there kind of have to bring the score down a little bit. So I went with an 8 out of 10 for everything. I think being able to accurately kind of animate that final scene, which in the comic is two guys sitting at a coffee table and they clink glasses and that's it. And then they kind of walk out. To make that visually interesting is great too. And to kind of accurately portray that in animation, I think, and bring that warmth of like that story is warm and you get the warm and fuzzies. Everybody shares that one shot of Batman and Gordon clinking glasses starting December 26th. You'll see it on every social media platform for the next 5 or 6 days of, here's to survival. So for them to be able to kind of accurately and faithfully recreate that in animation, I think is a testimony in of itself. So yeah, I went with an 8 out of 10 for my score. What about you?
Yeah, I actually went with the same exact score. Once again, 8 out of 10 for my visuals as well. And I think my only other visual note were at the end, the carolers who are singing a lovely rendition of Auld Lang Syne are based on some of the people who worked on the show. Shane Glines, there's sort of a buzz cut guy. There is one that's very clearly based on Glenn Murakami, and then the DCAU wiki says the third guy is Bruce Timm, but I'm almost positive it's actually Butch Lukic because I've seen Bruce Timm draw himself quite a few times over the years, and that's not what that looked like. So I'm pretty sure that's Butch Lukic, Shane Glines, and Glenn Murakami in the diner at the end. And maybe that diner owner Joe looks a little bit like a brown-haired Mr. Dini as well.
That's right. If you're a DCAU wiki editor and you have any hate, please send it to us via @DCAU review. Direct all of your hatred towards Liam.
We've put the call out before. I do want to talk to these people. I just want to know. I want to know why they do what they do.
Please, maybe we'll have an off-air interview just to discuss your modus operandi. Oh man, I think the I had something else that I wanted to mention. I don't remember what it was, but yeah. Overall, eights out of 10 for both of us. There, it's a pretty good score, regardless of any sharp transitions from this one style of Batman the Animated Series to the new Batman Adventures, and as we get used to it here over the next couple of years? Question mark. All right, Lane, let's move on to our next category, which is going to be music. Shirley Walker credited, I believe, in the credits for all of our music for this week. And boy, howdy, we get a great rendition of a bunch of Christmas classics. Counted them. I think we have 12 Days of Christmas. Not a Christmas classic, but of course, Auld Lang Syne also. More of a New Year's classic. I think I heard Joy to the World in there as well. Boy, it's great that you get to use some of these Christmas classics as a way to set the tone and mood for your stories, but even more so to punctuate some of your action, of course, with the countdown and the bell falling on the Joker, and punctuating the scene between Batman and Gordon, some light stuff, but I think the note that I loved the most, which I was just like, this perfectly encapsulates the entire episode for me. It's a Paul Dini story. The visual of Harvey Bullock rolling up his sleeves and realizing he's going to have to dig through Clayface to recover evidence. And you just get this sad sack, wah, 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 that's played to accompany.
This is great horn, like wah, wah, wah. Like it kind of matches his like slow, skulky walk.
Yep.
As he's walking towards Clayface. It's great.
Just fantastic. Like what a great shot there. Yeah, and then of course the montage of Harley and Ivy gets played with some pretty good tunes. Also on top of it, that's where we get the 12 Days of Christmas that comes in, and then we get I think Joy to the World plays when I don't know if it's when the tree falls or if that's in the next scene with maybe it's the next scene when we're opening up and seeing Harvey as Santa. But you get some Christmas classics punctuated in here with some good, just general symphonies of orchestral compositions. I don't remember hearing the Batman theme, the Shirley Walker Batman theme, come through. At least I didn't note it. But I feel like the episode doesn't have time.
It's maybe used for a moment or two. When there's the shot of him kind of looking down at Harley and Ivy in silhouette once he's caught them and dropped the tree.
Okay.
And I feel like it maybe comes in for a second there.
Okay, yeah, that's quite possible. But you also I feel like the episode didn't have time, nor did it need it, because of just the theme of everything. You have the holiday hits that are played and that kind of set more of the mood and the tone for everything, as opposed to the heroic themes or the standard heroic themes. So I really enjoyed the music for this week's episode. Was there anything that I haven't mentioned that you would like to mention when it comes to music?
No, I think that about covers it. Yeah, all the getting to use the holiday music, I think, was a really nice touch. And like this sort of, again, and not all played in the exact same way either. Like there's like this real kind of like fun, upbeat. It sounds like the version of 12 Days of Christmas you would hear in a department store in the 90s. Like this weird like saxophone driven like little like upbeat jazzy version of 12 Days of Christmas. It's like, yeah, absolutely that would be playing in a Kohl's in 1996. Like, yeah, absolutely. So that I think they did a great job with not only the songs they chose, but how they played it. I thought was quite lovely as well. I thought they did a great job overall.
Yeah, I ended up giving music for that for myriad of reasons, but I gave it a really strong 9 out of 10. What about you?
Yeah, I gave it 8 out of 10 for the same reason. I think it's just great fun.
There we go. Easy synopsis for our music reviews if you skipped through that. Great fun. All right, Liam, let's move to our final category of the day, which is going to be voice acting. We, of course, have a lot of series regulars here and we can run through and talk about as far as our regulars go. We do, of course, have a few bit players playing some of our supporting roles, which are also familiar names. But then we have, of course, seems like an annual tradition now, or a weekly tradition now. We have a new voice for Batgirl to talk about. Let's discuss all of that in this week's voice actors, shall we?
Absolutely. So in some minor roles, I'll just mention because they have funny lines. We do have Corey Burton in there as he's playing one. I think he's playing one of the uniform cops in the mall in the Batgirl sequence. He's the sports commentator. That's probably something I don't know if we mentioned. He says Altieri drops back. That's the quarterback is named Altieri, right. Which obviously a shout to Kevin having drawn that story in the original comic, and then of course Corey is also playing Joe, the diner owner, at the end, and he does have. Again, there's so many like favorite lines in this, but start practicing for St. Patty's Day is pretty high up the list. So he's quite good. We have playing some of the different young ladies who are trying to get Bruce's attention at the party, and I think my favorite, one of the little boys. I assume this is the one that says "You're not the real Santa Claus." Is Tress McNeil, another voice actress we talk about all the time, who was I believe
she played Bambi in this, by the way, which we didn't mention, but Bambi, Miss Bambi,
yes,
from Mask of the Phantasm, makes another appearance this week. Yeah. She was in last week's episode in Sub-Zero also. I guess Veronica's just trying to pawn Bambi off on Bruce so badly. Like she's
one of the chronically single socialites of Gotham City, I guess.
That's right.
Poor Bambi here, but yes, she's that line, and then it might be both of her because she's the only one credited as little boy that I see. But there's also the one that's reading off his list of things as Bullock is asleep, and then as all of the shoplifting clay faces come running through the mall, Montoya wakes him up, and Bullock just jumps up to his feet, and the kid just goes flying, and the noise made when this kid goes flying, like I can't recreate it. We're gonna have to play the clip, but yeah, it's incredible. So shout out to some of our bit players here.
And a bag of marbles, and a football, and a
juvenile suspect seen heading towards menswear. There are 4 of them.
A monster,
all have been observed shoplifting. Detectives are in pursuit.
Wake up, Harvey. We're on.
Speedboat, and
we have young Rachel Davey as Mary McSweeney. That is like a fun little, another little holiday special moment they just sprinkle in there,
right?
Of Bullock having Bullock's heart grows 3 sizes that day as he shows some kindness even in the midst of all of his misery. But speaking of which, we do have Robert Costanza as Detective Bullock and Leanne Shermer returning as Detective Montoya. And they're great. They're great together in this.
So good.
They're so funny. Every line is funny. I already mentioned it, but you're not the real Santa Claus. Sure I am, kid. You want to see my gun?
You could be a little more jolly, St. Nick.
Give me a break, Montoya. This is the lamest stakeout I've ever been on. We better get some lead on this invisible shoplifter soon, or... Ooh.
You're not the real Santa Claus.
Sure I am. Want to see my gun? Ow!
Dude, I cackled I'm sitting here on my couch watching this by myself, and I am laughing out loud.
I could not believe, he gets in the kid's face and says, "Do you want to see my gun?"
So funny,
such a funny line, and that's great credit to Bobby Costanza's performance there. But we also, as mentioned, we do have Mary Lou Henner returning as Veronica Vreeland as well, and then getting down to some of our villains of the piece here. We do have Diane Pershing returning as Poison Ivy, and Arlene Sorkin as Harley Quinn in their sequences, of course. When I think of the funniest single lines that Arlene's Harley ever delivered, I think, "Look, pianos." is very high up the list for me. I think she's so funny, and I mean they're both she and Diane together are both so funny in this episode, bouncing off of each other and off of the increasingly frustrated Bruce Wayne. But they're great fun together.
Yeah, they're fantastic. I mean, their chemistry is on full display here, and there's a reason why. I mean, from Ivy's, as I said, her berating Harley at the beginning for even considering wanting to get a Christmas tree and what that means to the environment, and killing another tree just for holiday spirit, and then them enjoying themselves with Bruce's cash, and then as you mentioned, the pianos line, and her, Merry Christmas, and even though the line has changed to Happy Holidays instead of Happy Hanukkah, or Happy New Year instead of Happy Hanukkah, like it was in the comic, Harley, hitting Batman with a hammer. That's great. And then their little sort of, being undone by their greed at the end, and Ivy really rubbing it in Harley's face, her just kind of being happy that she does get her wish at the end. Like, she's just happy that she gets to hang out with the Christmas tree, even though it's her undoing. Very funny. And both of those ladies, unsurprisingly, turned in some really great performances.
Absolutely, they're fantastic. Yeah, ending on that very Looney Tunes cut in on Harley as the ball drops off the tree and hits her in the head. And
yep.
Is a great little bit there to end on. But yes, other villains. Of course, we have Ron Perlman returning as Clayface, as well. I think he also voices Mo, Lara, and Kerr in this episode. They don't have the Three Stooges impression voice actors yet, so we have Ron Perlman here just filling in here. He doesn't get many lines, but it's fun to have him back in it. He does. Before he huck to us when he hits Bullock with "You're scaring me, Tubby," is a pretty good one-liner. But yeah, he doesn't have very much to do here. But it's fun that he's there. And then of course we have Mark Hamill as the Joker. That opening bit where he's doing the radio broadcast. Just lines that are permanently burned into my brain, both from the comic and from watching this so many times. Him referring to himself as your loving Uncle Joker is really funny to me. Like when you've talked about Mark Hamill's Joker 6,000 times, you just start to zero in on random funny lines that he says. But that's kind of what stood out to me. And maybe the juxtaposition of him doing the Joker laugh and then looking up, seeing the bell, and you see him very quietly go, "Oh no." That's very good too. Like, some of the more understated bits, I feel like, are what I pulled out of this one, as along with all of the mania and the Joker laugh of it all.
No, I wholeheartely agree. Of course, Mark Hamill's Joker, unrivaled. It's on the Mount Rushmore, certainly in the discussion of voices in the DCAU. And another great performance that when he comes on and blows the whistle and gives the whole diatribe about how he's not going to kill anybody for the next year, so he has to kill as many people as he can before midnight. Again, just so faithful to, like, you can, even before hearing it in the animation, you can read the comic and hear Mark Hamill's voice, and then when he delivers it, it's almost even better than you could possibly imagine. So yeah, unsurprisingly, a really, really great performance, all punctuated by him giving the ouch at the very end.
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of fun. And then we get our heroes to talk about here. Of course, Tara Sharondoff, as she was known at the time, voicing Batgirl for the first time. We've poured our hearts out about varying Batgirl voice actors last week. She's good. Again, she also gets 3 lines in this because, again, it's such an action focus segment, and it's really carried by Bullock and Montoya more than her. But she does a fine job. As mentioned, her delivery of the "oh, it's perfect, Dad's gonna love it," and then the reveal that she's looking at a red tie is great.
That and the "shoot the Santa" line, which is another great bit from the comic, where she says the Harvey and Bullock, and I keep calling him Harvey. Bullock and Montoya are shooting at or ain't getting ready to shoot at Clayface, who's about to attack Batgirl, and she's like, "Don't shoot me, shoot the Santa." And Bullock just looks at Montoya and goes, "You wouldn't." But of course, they're talking about the electric plugged in light up Santa that's going to fall and electrocute him. So, yeah, very funny stuff.
Absolutely. And then we do get a taste here of Matthew Valencia as his first turn as Robin, again, about 2 lines. But they had an actual kid playing Robin for the first time. So we'll be watching his career with great interest as we go forward here into more episodes that actually star him. Yeah, like you said, he looks extra. Maybe that's with the visuals. His voice sounds extra high to me, and he looks, maybe that goes with like the slightly younger looking or slightly smaller scaled Robin in this episode. It's like, oh, he's young in this episode to me. But
yeah, he did sound. It's interesting because I think I remember we didn't talk about it, but this episode originally debuted on September 13th, 1997. So 27 years ago at this point, but it was in the fall. It wasn't Christmas time when the episode aired.
Right.
So I remember vividly watching this and being like, first of all, who's this Robin? Second of all, why does he sound like a girl? Like he sounds. Yeah. I thought it was like a Bart Simpson type thing where they got a female to do his voice in order to kind of prolong the idea of having a younger sounding voice. But of course, that's not the case. The great Matt Valencia was the person voicing him at the time. But I do know his voice changes. Obviously, it gets a little bit deeper. But here, I was initially caught off guard in that his initial line, talking with Batman in Commissioner Gordon in that sequence.
Yeah, absolutely agreed there. And and we got our main hero to talk about, along with I saved him for last since that's where the episode ends. But we have, of course, Bob Hastings as Commissioner Gordon, and of course Kevin Conroy as Batman. Kevin gets more to do than our other heroes because he's in 2 sequences as opposed to Robin and Batgirl's 1 each. So. But he doesn't really talk a lot in the Harley and Ivy sequence. So, it's still not like a ton for him to do across these episodes. I do always enjoy, and again, that's a hallmark of a lot of Paul Dini, is that any interactions between him and Veronica are usually pretty fun, I think. So, I'm glad that tradition has carried on into the new Batman adventures here. But other than that, I feel like it all just comes down to that final scene at the end, as we've already talked about, but between him and Bob Hastings in the diner. It's just like such a small, quiet, and like it just makes them feel like human, like 3-dimensional characters to just have this. They take this tradition to have this quiet moment and discuss, making it through another year. It's like, oh man, that's such a sweet moment, and it's not played like super sappy. But it is it's just nice in the way that they talk with each other, that they do see each other as friends and coworkers. It isn't just Gordon's not just the guy who like gives Batman a file on a rooftop and then Batman disappears. Like they are friends. Like, so right, I think that's I love that final scene, as great as it is in the comic. It's wonderful to get to hear to Kevin and Bob Hastings, both now unfortunately who have departed us, get that they got to voice this scene and lend their talents to it is quite a gift.
Well, here's to survival. Hopefully we'll be doing this again next New Year's Eve.
Hopefully.
And now, Joe, if I could get one of your famous cheesesteaks to go, I'll be ready to call it a night. Anything for you. One of these years, I'm going to beat him to the check.
Absolutely. Immortalized forever. Whether you prefer the medium of print and you prefer to read your comic or prefer to watch this, either way, it's nice knowing that you can go and watch this and listen to the pretty much word for word the exactly how the comic is done. So yeah, having Kevin Conroy and Bob Hastings get to do the scene together, such an iconic scene as we talked about in the history of the DCAU, let alone DC Comics. It's really, really cool that they both got to do that. So yeah, not a lot asked of our voice actors for the majority of the episodes. We mentioned it's a lot of action, a lot of cuts from scene to scene and sequence to sequence in order to fit everything in. But I feel like everybody really did a great job, kind of knocking it out of the park. So I didn't have any choice but to give this a perfect 10 out of 10 for voice acting. Yeah, everybody's really good. It's the all-star team here. It's the dream team.
Absolutely.
As far as everybody kind of put together here, even some of our iconic villains here with Ron Perlman and Arlene Sorkin and of course Mark Hamill and so yeah, hard not to give this a perfect score in my opinion.
Yeah, same. Can't away like I said. Even our bit players, some of our background actors are so funny in this, and then the from Bullock and Montoya to Gordon and Batman, and like I said, the funny moments and the heartwarming stuff at the end. It's tremendous, and it's pretty much perfect, which is why, of course, I also gave it the 10 out of 10.
Fantastic. There we go. All right, Liam. Well, that means it's time to wrap things up here with our final scores. Totaling everything up on my end, I end up with a top pick section worthy score of 37 out of 40. What about you?
Nice. And yeah, I came in at just 1 point lower. I think folks may have noticed we only disagreed in one category. So
there you go.
I ended up with a 36 out of 40.
There you go. Rewatchability. We don't really need to discuss this. It's a must watch, right?
It's one of the classics. This is one of the best of the whole series. And it's the first episode. Even though it obviously it doesn't happen first.
Right.
Like it can't, because Tim's already Robin in this episode. It is the first episode that aired and the first episode that was produced. So you kind of have to watch the first episode of the new Batman Adventures, I think, and rewatch it for that matter. So as we always say, it's rewatchability. So, and it's just great fun. So double thumbs up easily.
There we go. All right, Liam, well, that will be going to wrap things up. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in this week. It's been great. This will wrap up our full reviews for 2024. So we will have something dropping over the next couple weeks for you. So this isn't our final episode of the year, but our final review of 2024. So we want to thank everybody that tuned in this year. Our numbers, we don't do it for the numbers, but our numbers this year, better than they've ever been, consistently. Interacting with all of you listeners has been up. Interactions, whether it's through comments on the podcast itself, if you're listening on Spotify, or social media platforms, as hellscapish as they can be at times. It's been great to interact with everybody that we've gotten to interact with. We got Christmas cards from a couple of listeners, which is really kind and always touching.
Kind, yes.
Yeah, always touching that. Liam and I do this for fun. We take the time every week to set aside 30 minutes to watch a cartoon or 20 minutes to watch a cartoon, and then an hour and a half to talk and hang out. And the fact that we get to hopefully provide you with some distraction and joy in the midst of the darkness that the world can be, brings us enough joy as it is. But then when you guys go, the listeners go extra mile to reach out to us and let us know what you think about episodes, or reach out to us and send us a card or a little gift or a thought that came up when you were listening to an episode, that means the world to us. So we're as appreciative to you as you are to us. So let's do this again for another year or so. What do you say, Liam?
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, just to echo those thoughts. Yeah, it's incredibly kind of anybody would take the time to wish us well, let alone send us something like that. So very, very thankful to you, to all of you. We kind of end with some kind of message like this. I think this will be our last one before the actual Christmas holiday. So we know there's a lot of pressure around this time of year to look like you're having fun, whether you are or not. And so if you're having a rough time this year, we understand, and hopefully we can give you a distraction for an hour or 90 minutes a week, and we appreciate you sharing your fun memories of these shows with us. It's the best part of the show is getting to discuss them, not just with each other but with everybody there. So appreciate everybody as we head towards the end of this holiday season and the new year. Just for taking time to enjoy our little show, and for telling us what they remember about their own experiences with these shows.
Absolutely. And just to add that my hope is just that regardless of how dark things are for you, believe that the best is yet to come. yeah, thanks for listening all this year. We will have more stuff for you. We have a bonus episode next week that we will drop. So in the meantime, of course, if you want to support the podcast, there's many ways to do so. Subscribe on your favorite podcast app, leave reviews, leave a 5-star review, support us by following us on social medias at DCAU Review. Interact with us on social media. Those are all fun ways to do so. Check out the show notes if you want to support the podcast that way. But really, we hope that the holiday season is the best for you, and that these next couple of days, whether you celebrate Christmas or you don't, whether you see family or you don't, just know you're cared for. We're happy that you're a listener of ours, and we hope that you have a great holiday season. As I mentioned, Liam, we are not leaving our listeners empty-handed. We will be dropping a special bonus episode the following Saturday after Christmas. That will be our last episode of the year. And to drop that episode, we're going to go kind of off the board here. We've only ever done this a handful of times before, but we're not going to be discussing anything animation related. We're going to the world of live action DC for our final bonus episode of 2024. And it's going to be something that's certainly worth talking about as we look towards 2025, 2026, and the continuation of the Matt Reeves Batman universe.
Absolutely, Cal. So there's a little show that dropped earlier this year that was pretty well received, I think, known as The Penguin. And hey, it's winter. Penguins like the cold, so it fits. There's a theme here.
There we go.
We're not just doing it because we liked the show and wanted an excuse to talk about it. It's because it's a theme. Right. But no, yeah, we're really excited. We're going to just kind of give our thoughts on the series as a whole. And maybe even though it's not for one of the animated shows, maybe we'll bring back the old baseless speculation station, talk about what we think could come up in The Batman Part 2, if and when that movie ever comes out. I feel like it keeps getting pushed back, but I think with the success of this show, it's definitely coming. So it'll be fun to discuss that and discuss the whole Batman. They made a Batman show without Batman, and it was really good. And I feel like it'll be fun to dissect how and why this show worked so well. So excited to chat with you, like you said, a little bit off the beaten path of what we normally chat about on this show. But we had a lot of people seem to like our The Batman review that we did when that movie came out a couple years ago. So hopefully this will be a nice little companion piece to go with that, and to discuss what we'd like to see coming up next in that particular film universe.
Absolutely. And then in 2 weeks, we'll do our annual DCAU review, year in review, to kick off 2025. Man, can't wait for that. It's going to be fun. But until then, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we'll talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU review.
Bye-bye.